So let's maybe start out with Mazagaon Dock shipbuilders, and I think their dry dock capacity is maybe in the 30 to 50,000, displacement weight tons. Primarily because they produce frigates, destroyers, and submarines, which are relatively smaller ships, but extremely critical to the functioning of a navy, because they're often required at volume.
That's right, and I think again technology, speed, uh, their capacity, their capability, all of that comes into play. And again, I think they have to move with the times in terms of what the requirements of the Indian Navy is as well.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of technology inputs over here, and mind you, this shipbuilding is requires a very sophisticated supply chain mechanism in place as well, because there's all the equipment and all the various systems are not manufactured by the shipbuilders.
Mhm.
Shipbuilding is more of an assembly job as well,
Right.
and integrating all of these small and large equipment so as to make the entire ship functional and relevant.
Right, and I think that's maybe reflected in how some of these companies are valued. So let's maybe talk our viewers through what the financials of Mazagaon Docks are.
Yes.
So over the last 5 years, their revenues have grown at 11% compounded and profit at 15% compounded, but order book has shrunk at about 8% compounded over the last 5 years. And I think that reflects what you were talking about, where a lot of the orders they've received, they've completed, and that's why their order book position is going down. But they've realized a lot of that revenue, and now that they're getting close to delivering a lot of ships, they're realizing a lot of incremental profit, which is why you see their profit outpacing the growth in their revenue.
That's right, and also Varun, a lot of these shipbuilders they work in very close cooperation with the defense ministry.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the defense ministry can keep on handing out orders to shipbuilders. They need to assess what capacity is coming up, which are the ships which will be ready to deliver, at what point they'll get delivered, and then place new orders.
Right.
So I'm not too worried about the order book position of the shipbuilders.
Mm-hmm.
It's the execution which is a big risk factor for the shipbuilding companies.
Right.
And there could be changes in design, changes in technology, delays in getting the right type of equipment,
Right.
testing. There are many
Moving parts
moving
with
parts.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's
But let's
execution the key
let's
thing.
focus in on Mazagaon Docks, because they've been around for a very long time and they've clearly got a long execution track record.
Absolutely.
And something really interesting to note, they're headquartered out of Mumbai, and they're very tightly integrated with the Western Naval Command of India. So just very interesting thing to note. India's two biggest naval victories were during the 1971 war, if I'm not mistaken, where we launched 3 frigates that were missile carriers. And when we were fighting Pakistan in 71, they conducted an immense operation where they bombed out Karachi's port and they bombed out Karachi's fuel reserve systems, which were really quite critical to helping us win that war. And so clearly, Mazagaon has deep expertise in building these frigates and destroyers, because they've been doing it for a long time. And there's a long demand for these frigates and destroyers. So just to give you a little bit more in terms of context. So we've spoken about how we want to anchor our military capabilities to China, because that's who we see as a peer military. India has only 42 warships versus China that has 138.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huge disparity.
Huge disparity. Now, of course, there's the aircraft carrier component of this, and we'll come to that, particularly when we talk about Kochi shipyard. But the vast majority of your navy, in terms of tonnage and displacement, comes from frigates and destroyers, mid-sized ships that form the bulk of a carrier group. And Mazagaon Docks is critical to producing that.
That's right, I think, and that's why it's so important from the defense industry point of view. And mind you, they haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to exports.
Yeah.
So on the whole, I think Mazagaon Dock has been a recent discovery because of the entire flavor of defense, which is why they have come into focus. Massive order book position, and I think great earnings visibility, but I would also say high degree of volatility in their earnings, which I don't think all investors will be able to stomach.
Yeah. But another interesting thing with Mazagaon Docks that I found quite surprising is that they're currently trading at 24p, which is not that expensive, particularly when you consider future growth prospects, when you consider the long-term PE of the Nifty. But in the last year since listing, they are up 4x.
Wow, that's fantastic. I
Yeah.
didn't know that number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which confuses me because I would like to understand who exactly allowed Mazagaon Docks to list at a PE of like 5, 6.
See, that's the government, I think, they're in their hurry to kind of list these companies. Actually, all PSU companies have been listed at very, very low price to earnings multiple, low valuations. And it's only now that the order book positions are bulging, this entire focus on Atmanirbhar, on self-sufficiency in defense. That's where I think investors recognize the immense potential of all defense companies, including the naval shipyards. And that's why the stock has moved up the way it has. Also, to an extent, tight liquidity, closely held shareholding pattern has been a
84%
difference.
of it is still
Exactly.
owned by the government.
Exactly. So that's
So
also one of the factors. And once you have institutional orders, marquee investors buying into it, automatically the fancy gets created.
this podcast is produced by Elixir Equities Private Limited, a SEBI-registered research analyst. Registration number INA 0000004787. The information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. We strongly advise all investors to read all related documents carefully before investing.